Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and unpack the federal government's massive new AI for All strategy. We are looking at a comprehensive $3.5 billion blueprint, and it's designed to completely transform Canada's digital landscape. But, beneath all those shiny promises of innovation and economic growth, there is a really complex web of geopolitical strategy. There are massive environmental concerns, and honestly, there is a deeply skeptical public. So today, we're going to break down exactly what this strategy means, where all that money's actually flowing, and whether it can genuinely deliver on some pretty towering promises.
We have to start with this incredibly striking paradox. Canada actually helped invent modern AI. I mean, we're home to the godfathers of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, Yoshua Bengio, and Richard Sutton. We've got these world-class research hubs, right? Places like Mila in Montreal, the Vector Institute in Toronto, and me in Edmonton. As a country, we've raised over $37 billion in AI venture capital. But here's the crazy part. Despite all of that, we rank near the absolute bottom globally when it comes to AI literacy. A recent Global Trust study put Canada 44th out of 47 countries in AI training. Think about that for a second. The very nation that gave the world deep learning is somehow struggling to teach its own citizens how to actually use it.
And that leads directly to a rather embarrassing adoption gap. As we sit here today, only 12% of Canadian businesses have formally integrated AI into their day-to-day operations. 12%. Just to put that number into perspective, Nordic countries are sitting way up between 29 and 42%. Germany is at 26%. So we have the brilliant minds, we have the research, we have the companies building these incredible frontier models. But when it comes to Main Street businesses actually adopting the tools to get more productive, we are lagging severely behind.
So let's look at Section 1, inside the $3.5 billion strategy. To fix this massive gap, the government has basically gone all in. They appointed a dedicated Minister of AI and rolled out this massive blueprint. And if you follow the money, it gets really interesting. They are pouring funds directly into fixing the big bottlenecks. You've got $700 million going toward a compute access fund, which clears a huge hurdle for startups trying to get processing power. Then there's $1 billion split between the BDC Lift program and various regional AI initiatives. That money is designed specifically to drag that 12% adoption rate up by directly financing small and medium businesses. And check out the $200 million carved out just for healthcare. Which makes sense, because this isn't just theoretical stuff. AI is already out there working. Canadian innovators like Dr. Robert Chen are using it to diagnose heart murmurs in newborns. At St. Michael's Hospital, an AI tool called ChartWatch has actually reduced unexpected patient deaths by 26%. The whole goal here is to aggressively fund the stuff that's already working.
Now, the strategy itself rests on 6 huge pillars, and it is a delicate balancing act. On one hand, they're trying to protect kids, modernize privacy laws, and counter deepfakes, basically trying to build up some desperately needed public trust. But on the other hand, they're laser-focused on opportunity. They're pushing free AI literacy training and job placements, all while throwing serious money at computing infrastructure. Because they desperately want to make sure our top tech champions don't just pack up their bags and move to the US. They're trying to lock down what they call a sovereign AI foundation.
The promises they are making are frankly staggering. We are talking about a $200 billion economic boost and 250,000 new jobs if we can just close this adoption gap. Right now, there's roughly 150,000 Canadians working in AI-related fields, but the strategy is looking at a massive scale-up. They even included plans for 90,000 paid job placements just to help students get their foot in the door. But look, let's be real for a second. These are highly optimistic projections. It's really a best-case scenario of what could happen if an entire nation pivots on a dime and embraces a totally new industrial capability.
Which brings us to the next section, the push for digital sovereignty. You see, underneath all those rosy economic promises is a very pressing geopolitical reality. This strategy isn't just about making your local business a bit more efficient. It is heavily influenced by a modern, high-stakes global arms race for computing power. And right now, Canada is overexposed. We rely almost entirely on American and Chinese platforms for our computing power and data storage. Think about it. When your local hospital stores sensitive patient data, or a Canadian researcher trains a brand new model, it is almost exclusively running on foreign cloud infrastructure. We literally do not own the pipes or the processors that run our digital lives. So naturally, if foreign powers control our data and our compute, they hold an immense amount of leverage over our national security. Senior advisor Richard St. Pierre pointed this out brilliantly.
He noted that weaponizing AI against Canada doesn't even need to be some sophisticated movie-style cyber attack. He said weaponization could be as simple as pulling the plug, right? A foreign provider or a foreign government could just sanction the infrastructure we rely on. We've already seen glimmers of this kind of tech nationalism globally, and this strategy document treats that vulnerability as a top-tier national security threat. To combat this massive vulnerability, the government is pushing a build, partner, buy doctrine. The primary goal is to build an astonishing 850 megawatts of domestic compute capacity. That is a colossal undertaking. But Canada does have a secret weapon here: our environment. Over 83% of our electricity comes from renewable or low-emission sources, and our naturally cold climate actually cuts down the intense cooling costs that usually make data centers so incredibly expensive to run. And for the stuff we can't build ourselves, Ottawa is leaning into partnerships, like the Canada-Germany Sovereign Technology Alliance, pooling resources with democratic allies to try and compete against the massive foreign tech giants that dominate the market today.
But all of this ambition brings us to Section 3, the true cost, focusing on jobs and the environment.
Despite all the government's enthusiasm and funding, they are running into a brick wall of public resistance. Recent polls show that 73% of Canadians actually disagree with the idea that AI is a force for good in society. 73%. This isn't just a little bit of mild skepticism. Polling experts are literally calling it the Grand Canyon of a trust gap. People are crossing their arms right at the exact moment the government is begging them to embrace this technology. The public wants regulations, and they are incredibly dubious of the tech industry's real motives. And a huge chunk of that skepticism is fueled by harsh environmental realities. Did you know a single hyperscale data center can guzzle up to 19 million liters of water every single day? And that is just to keep the servers cool. So at a time when cities across the entire country are putting strict summer watering restrictions on their residents, the idea of an invisible data center just chugging millions of liters of local water is creating some massive community friction. Plus, the sheer energy drain of these places is absolutely off the charts. Some of these proposed AI facilities require the equivalent power of 2 million homes. That's prompted leaders, like Manitoba's Premier Wab Kinyo, to reject certain projects outright. He actually pointed out that one of these centers could use the power of 100 steel mills, and he asked a very fair question: wouldn't that energy be better spent somewhere else? Now, the government argues that newer projects use closed-loop water systems, basically recycling the same water over and over, and that they even repurpose the server heat to warm up local homes. But still, the massive, staggering scale of energy required is a huge point of contention.
Then, of course, there is the human element. While the strategies out there touting rapid job creation, critics are quick to point out the glaring lack of data on how many jobs are actually going to be displaced by this tech. If you're a parent or a teacher, you probably feel this tension every day. Academics are warning that we might end up swapping out stable, long-term careers for precarious gig economy roles. And educators, they're sounding the alarm about an atrophying of critical thinking skills as students start relying on chatbots to do their homework. Yes, the government has promised new legislation to protect kids and safeguard privacy, but for a whole lot of people, this massive push for adoption feels like it's racing way ahead of the actual guardrails. Which leaves us with a final section. Will it actually work? Trying to balance this deep entrenched public skepticism with the very real need to modernize the economy brings us to the ultimate test of the whole strategy. The true measure of success here is going to be whether Ottawa can move the needle from that dismal 12% adoption rate today all the way up to their target of 60% by 2034. Going from 12 to 60 isn't just a slight bump, right? It's a 5x increase in less than 10 years. Pulling that off would be one of the fastest, most dramatic technological shifts in Canadian economic history. It means thousands of everyday businesses have to completely overhaul how they do things. But for local business owners, the message coming from the top is loud and clear. The funding is real, the market signals are set, and vendor choices are now literally geopolitical decisions. The government is heavily signaling that it wants to be an anchor customer for trusted, sovereign, Canadian-made AI solutions. So if you run a business here, deciding where to host your data and what models to use, it isn't just an IT choice anymore. It ties directly into national security priorities, and it definitely ties into your access to future government funding. Ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, is this $3.5 billion strategy the blueprint for a strong, resilient Canada, or is it just a really costly gamble on unproven tech? The government has definitely laid its cards on the table, backing up the vision with billions in funding and a clear drive to reclaim Canada's spot as a global AI leader.
But with public trust sitting at rock bottom, massive environmental concerns looming, and adoption hurdles everywhere you look, the road ahead is anything but guaranteed. Will Canada actually close the gap? Or are we just going to keep funding the research that the rest of the world profits from? That is the question we will all be watching incredibly closely over the next few years.